I'll be discussing some of the issues around citizenship, law, and politics. My lecture will be divided into two broad sections. The first section would be dealing entirely with the conceptual debates around citizenship, and the second will address itself to the developments around the citizenship law in India and make the connection between the themes that I flagged in the first section while looking at the conceptual debates around citizenship and how they pan out, in the around the disputes over the law of citizenship. And while I do that, I hope I will be able to raise larger concerns around citizenship, institutions, and politics. Now, if we look at citizenship in terms of a concept that has come to be used in the discourse, public discourse around democracy, and a lot of academic and intellectual ferment around the category has come up largely post 1990s. If we look at the string of the debate around citizenship post 1990s, there is almost a universal consensus around what can be called a definition of citizenship. And the definition of citizenship, which I would be using in this lecture as almost a working definition, is a definition that has been attributed to T.H. Marshall, who was a British sociologist. And this definition is citizenship is full and equal membership in the political community. Now, the definition that is ascribed to Marshall is a derived one. Now, if you were to go and look at the essay by T.H. Marshall, Citizenship and Social Class, you would find that nowhere in that essay Marshall uses this statement to define what citizenship is. What he does say, and I'm going to read out that brief extract, he says that citizenship is a status bestowed on those who are full members of a community. All who possess the status are equal with respect to rights and duties with which the status is associated. In societies where citizenship is a developing institution, there are ideals which are created, and towards these ideals, efforts are directed. Now, I would see this brief paragraph that has been presented by Marshall as consisting of two parts. Now, one of the parts is where he talks about citizenship as status. And the other part is where he talks about citizenship as an ideal towards which all societies that install citizenship as an ideal work towards. So, citizenship in that sense would become almost a promise that societies make to themselves and evolve institutional arrangements to ensure that this movement is possible. Now, these two components of that definition in some ways suggest two different ways in which people think about citizenship. And there is, therefore, I would suggest, a dispute around how one could use the category of citizenship. And while one uses this category of citizenship in specific ways, what are the meanings that one attributes to those usages? And disputes around usages and meanings of concepts make concepts contested. And now I borrow this framework from W.B. Galley, who said that And he, of course, used democracy as the uh, as what he calls the an evaluative concept par excellence. And he uses the example of democracy to map the framework of the debate around contests which he over concepts which he calls essentially contested concepts. Now, when we talk about concepts as essentially contested, what we basically mean is that there is no agreement over what the core components of a concept are. And the disagreement or the dispute over what a concept actually consists of leads, according to Galli, to to philosophical elucidations around know what a category ought to be. So when we say concepts are essentially contested, we are also saying that there would be disagreement among those who use that concept to what they think the core component of a concept would be. And a second aspect of that contest would be to give a certain kind of evaluative attribute to that concept so that the concept comes to be used as a standard, a normative framework around which we begin understanding how we organize our social and political lives. So, when I say that citizenship is an essentially contested concept, I want to suggest that there is perhaps no immutable core that one can assign to citizenship. And a second dimension that I would want to attribute to citizenship is to say that citizenship provides an evaluative framework against which or within which we can assess how we look at ourselves or we organize our institutions or the way in which we look at our politics through frameworks and assess whether or not they are democratic. So the idea of essentially contested concept is basically driven to those two ends. Now, coming back to the two components of Marshallian definition of citizenship, one which has to do with the citizenship as status, and the other that has to do with the citizenship as an ideal towards which societies drive their efforts. These two components direct our attention to two different understandings of citizenship. Now, if one was to look at citizenship primarily in terms of status, and status in terms of people having membership in the political community, and this membership gives them the status of citizenship and also bestows them with certain rights and responsibilities. There would be, according to people like Roger Brubaker, who have made a comparative study of the historical development of citizenship in Europe and looked particularly at two countries, France and Germany, each as an exemplar of a certain model of citizenship that has developed historically. People like Roger Brubaker would say that the development of citizenship in terms of membership in the political community has taken two different forms. And however, even with the different expressions or forms that citizenship would take or has historically taken, through citizenship, he would argue, the modern state continually reproduces and reinforces itself. So, in some senses, citizenship is a modality through which the modern state makes itself effective, makes itself tangible, structures itself. If we go by the framework of Marshall, now Marshall was talking about the development of citizenship in terms of three bundles of rights: civil rights, political rights, and social rights that evolve over a period of time. And Marshall is talking about specifically the historical context of United Kingdom. And he does say, when he makes this exposition, that citizenship, the framework of citizenship that he is presenting before us, is a historical framework. No, it's not a logical framework in the sense that this is the sequence that would emerge historically in all societies. No, he just says it's a historically specific evolution of citizenship in the context of Britain. He also says, however, that citizenship evolves through these rights, but the evolution of these rights corresponds to the development of institutional structures of the state, so that each bundle of rights has a corresponding institution that develops alongside. And so we see the development of citizenship through three bundles of rights corresponding to what may be called the structuration of the state. And Brubaker would tell us that citizenship would become one of those modalities through which the modern state continually reproduces itself. Now, there are two ways in which Brubaker would say that citizenship and the citizenship becomes a modality through which the modern state reproduces itself or makes itself a tangible entity, and the powers of the state get ossified in some forms through the modalities of citizenship. One of the ways in which citizenship does that is to give the power of determining citizenship to the state. So the state uses citizenship as an instrument of closure, as Max Weber would tell us, as an instrument through which the state determines who belongs to the political community. And closure would take two forms. Externally, states would determine its boundaries through articulation of citizenship to say who would be part of this bounded community of citizenship. So externally, citizenship would be buttressed, and reinforced through articulations which would say that these are the people who would be part of this community of citizens. So as an instrument of closure, the state identifies who its citizens are and exercises its sovereign power to determine who would be the outsiders to this political community. And while doing so, the states also not just exercise or buttress its powers territorially. They also ensure that within this circumscribed territory, they are able to edge out and relativize all other competing claims to membership, so that there is an intensification and standardization of state power within the territory over which it exercises jurisdiction. So citizenship then becomes, as an instrument of closure, it becomes the modality through which states standardize and intensify their powers over a territorial entity. So that would be one aspect of how a citizenship as status is associated with the powers and functions of the modern state. The other expression of this relationship is also how citizenship as membership in the political community becomes the primary and perhaps the most salient expression of political membership. So when the state edges out competing claims to membership that other kinds of units, communities, organizations, estates, etc., place on citizens, the state, the idea of citizenship becomes, or the idea of citizenship as membership in the political community becomes an organizing principle of political membership, and the state then would in some senses become an association of citizens, and in some senses the people would become the nation and a totality of people who would express their membership in the political community as their most significant and primary form of membership. So in some senses, then, when we push the argument by Marshall of citizenship as status, we are talking about this status as in relationship with the state, and how it actually buttresses or facilitates the way in which the modern states take specific forms. Now, the second form or the second dimension of citizenship that that can be drawn from Marshall's framework is the idea that citizenship is an ideal and perhaps a promise towards which societies are continually making an effort, as something that needs to be achieved, and needs to be achieved in a form that would be democratic. And therefore, there are people like John Hoffman who would say that citizenship is a momentum concept, and a momentum concept would be distinct from static concepts like state and patriarchy that express the way in which power has structured over a period of time, and there is an element of an element of solidification of this power through structures of patriarchy, or through the way in which the modern state has taken its form. Citizenship, however, expresses a different logic. It is a logic of dynamism, and Hoffman would say that there is something internal to citizenship. The properties of citizenship are such, the promises that citizenship makes are such that citizenship cannot remain a static concept. It has internal properties that drive towards deepening and expansion, so that citizenship brings more and more people into its purview, and while doing so, it also changes its form. So this other understanding of citizenship is in terms of a momentum concept, which makes the concept dynamic and also, in that sense, democratic. So, and this is different from the first component or first aspect of the definition of Marshall, where citizenship is largely seen in terms of a status, and status would mean that there is a sense of both threshold and exclusion, which is determined by the state and is therefore directly associated with the entrenchment of the sovereign power of the state. Now, there are two more another aspect which I thought that would be important, and for that I would go back to Brubaker's articulation of two maybe the most salient forms in which citizenship expresses itself. No, and no, he talks about through his examples and studies of France and Germany to talk about two models of citizenship, the two expressions of citizenship that have over a period of time come to be considered as two models of citizenship. One in which citizenship is seen as something that is associated with land or territory, and he that is and France is an exemplar of that kind of citizenship. The way in which citizenship has historically developed in France is an articulation of the principle of jus soli, or the association of citizenship with land or territory. And if you look at this model of citizenship, or this principle through which land becomes the organizing factor of citizenship, one could see citizenship as something that has evolved through a feudal form of the state, where the state is seen as exercising jurisdiction over everybody who resides in that territory. So there is then an element where the state is seen as exercising both the power of protection and also the power of control over people who reside over that territory. In its modern articulation, however, not the feudal articulation of state exercising jurisdiction over people who reside over the territory, over which the state exercises its power, the modern form rearticulates this relationship into a political one, where those who are born on the territory over which the state exercises jurisdiction would be the citizens of that country. And the advantage of this kind of or the logic of this kind of citizenship is that irrespective of who your parents are, every generation that is born on a particular land can have claims to citizenship. And in some senses, this is seen as a model of citizenship which enables to bring together and through the idea that people are tied to that land through birth, to bring together people in a solidarity of citizenship when there is no other connection that they have in terms of blood ties, etc. So land then becomes an organizing principle and a unifying source for citizenship to emerge. Now, the other model of citizenship that is the other prevalent expression of citizenship across the world today is the principle of jus sanguinis, and this is a principle that is associated with the idea that citizens are not related to land but to each other, and this relationship accrues from a relationship of blood. So, which means that it's something that would that can be inherited and passed on. So citizenship is then a manifestation and an expression of blood ties. So and therefore it in some senses reproduces the political community in the same form. And it's also extended to in other forms, so that even in the contemporary context, for example, when there's no more mobility of people, and people move out of their or travel out of their of their countries in which they are born, and take up the citizenship of other countries. There are ways in which the ties with blood are sustained by ensuring that these people who have relinquished or have or have taken up the citizenship of another country are able to sustain those ties and retain affective relationship with their country of origin, and through implication to their ancestors and parents, and then through dual ties, or no, the idea of dual citizenship then enables and facilitates the sustenance of these such kind of ties. There are ways, however, in a different way such ties are retained is through an idea of the homeland. You know, there is something like an ancestral land, a homeland for a people who may not be living together, and the idea that one can return to this home. So a right to return, the idea that there is a homeland to which one can return, and therefore one is a potential citizen of a country that can be construed as homeland, and that homeland is, you know, the place of your ancestors, you know, and even if none of your ancestors has actually lived there, and no, it's an idea that symbolically and emphatically ties you to that piece of land which you could potentially call home. So moving on from, you know, the different you know, ideas that have accumulated around citizenship as status, which ties a person to makes a person entitled to rights, to and the idea that citizenship is not simply a status, but it is something that is constantly strived for, you know, through different kinds of mobilizations that you know, attempt to, you know, open up spaces of deliberation, and these spaces of deliberation are particularly about, you know, what kind of citizenship we have, and therefore the second aspect of Galley's framework, where, you know, he would call an essentially contested concept also as an evaluative concept.